Hey guys, this is the Revolutionary Male. My name is Alex, and tonight I'm going to go ahead and read another article from Tara Blair Ball, entitled, "It was only a matter of time before I cheated on my husband. It could have happened at any time. I know now." And this is an interesting article because, at least from the headline, it seems like this should be a useful example of a woman articulating the reasons why she cheated on her husband and taking accountability and responsibility for it. And I don't want to be somebody who's just constantly negative and reading articles where women are not doing that sort of thing. So this seemed like a reasonably, good option for one of my videos. So let's go ahead and get started. It was a cool January evening. A literary journal I'd previously worked for had asked me to do a reading of some of the work in their new issue for their release party. I'd worn tight black pants, vintage high heels, and a burgundy shirt. I'd straightened my hair and swiped dark shadow along my lids and gloss on my lips. "Do you want to come?" I asked my husband again as I was getting ready. "No," he said, and settled into the couch with his PlayStation remote in his hand. I'd been going everywhere by myself for a while now, not realizing in doing that I was making the decision to leave my marriage well before I first met with a divorce attorney. That's something that, guys, is very, very common. If your wife or girlfriend starts doing a lot of activities on her own, you're not going with her to these sorts of things, that is a bad sign. Because usually when the relationship is going well, they want you to go to that stuff and they'll make it very, very clear. And usually when the relationship's going well, you'll want to be around that person. So you'll want to go too, because you'll want to be together. I drove alone to the party. I chatted with the people I knew and then was introduced to do the reading. In front of the microphone, I felt sexy and desirable. I couldn't remember the last time my husband had accepted my advances or initiated sex on his own, but I felt confident about this at reading my or someone else's literary work in front of a crowd. Well, that's interesting. Typically in relationships, long-term relationships, it's the women who start rejecting their boyfriend or husband when they make sexual advances or initiate sex. So it's interesting to see that, although it's rare, that it can happen the other way. I smiled, thanked the audience for their attention, and stepped off the stage. An acquaintance stole next to me. He'd been drinking, but I was sober. "I really love how you read," he told me. "You have such a strong voice. Sexy, too." "Thank you," I smiled and walked closer to him, cupping my bubbly punch between us. We chatted for another 20 or so minutes about writing, the graduate program we'd both gone through, our mutual friends, and their successes and failures. I could smell alcohol on his breath. His eyes flitted down to my exposed collarbone. "Hey, we should get coffee sometime." He put his hand on my arm. I looked down at his hand on my arm. "Sure," I said. He dropped his hand and I stepped back, suddenly feeling off balance. So she knows what she's doing in this situation. Women always do. Women almost always know what they're doing in situations like this. That she is cheated. Because I'm going to give you this definition of infidelity. That's going to be different than anyone you ever heard, and I can't remember where I heard it. But it was a relationship coach online. I cannot remember his name, unfortunately. Sorry, whoever you are. But the best definition I have ever heard of infidelity is, it is any decision or choice that you make that reduces your role in the relationship. That's it. Anything that reduces your role in the relationship. And that's clearly what she's doing here, because she's getting sexual attention, romantic attention, from another man. All right. When the opportunity to leave the conversation arose, I took it, and then I left the party without saying goodbye to him. Before phone numbers were exchanged, times and places were picked. She's already cheated. That's infidelity right there. Is it a big deal? Not necessarily. As an individual couple, you and your girlfriend, you and your boyfriend have to have these conversations with each other about what you are comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, what you consider infidelity and what you don't consider infidelity or cheating. It's important that you need to have those conversations. You don't necessarily need to have them directly, in the sense of like, if I did this, how would you react? You don't need to have it like that. All you'd have to do is talk about maybe past experiences, or more abstractly or generally about what you don't like your partner, wife, husband, whatever, to do. What you don't like that person to do, whoever that person is. Okay? What you're not comfortable with. Let's see, I lost my place. Sorry. I drove home alone, obviously. I thought about going through with meeting him, how I could have explained or rationalized the incident in any manner of ways. We're both writers. He just wants a friend, but I knew the real reason behind his hand on mine. I still got it, I thought to myself. It's okay to flirt and still feel sexy every once in a while. How was it? My husband asked when I got home. Fine, I said, and got ready and slipped beneath the sheets of our bed alone. I fell asleep alone. Here's something too. Let's say you're in a relationship with a woman and she goes out to an event by herself, and assuming your relationship is good, and somebody does this to her. Somebody flirts with her, and she doesn't reciprocate it. What would be an indication of a good, healthy relationship might be that when she comes home, she volunteers this information. This guy hit on me. It made me feel like this, it made me feel like that. But I told him no. Now, you don't always have to do that, and some people don't like hearing about that stuff either. But if she was actually an honest wife in this situation, she would have come home and she would have said, honey, something happened at the party that we need to talk about because it's indicative of a bigger problem. If you're the party who's doing something like this, you need to have the conversation. Maybe you don't bring up the specific instance, but you need to have the conversation. You don't necessarily need to say, hey, I accepted a date offer. Because she didn't get his phone number or anything, but you could say, hey, you don't have to tell him I accepted an offer for a date. But maybe you could talk more abstractly about temptation and how, and even if it's for your own edification, maybe you just come home and have the conversation about the problems you're having in the relationship. Because maybe that's the first instance where you wake up to it. Oh my God, I almost wanted to go out on a date with somebody else. There's problems here. All right. I don't know if the acquaintance knew I was married, but in our entire conversation, I'd never once mentioned my husband. There you go. And she doesn't state whether or not she was wearing a wedding ring. I can recall several conversations with men where I outrightly never mentioned my marriage or my husband. See? It wasn't forgetfulness. No, of course not. Women do this stuff deliberately. There was a study that was done, I don't remember specifically, but if you Google it, you'll probably find it, where 1,000 women were asked, 1,000 married women were asked if they had a backup plan, like a plan B husband in waiting, and 50% of them did. 50% of those women had some other guy that they were essentially keeping as a backup plan in case their marriage failed and they got divorced. Okay? Lots of women are doing this. Lots and lots. It was not forgetfulness. It was more often than not a conscious act of omission. And that's the most common way that women will lie. More often than not, the way women lie is not directly. They don't tell direct lies, outright lies. They will withhold information. When my husband or marriage was casually brought up later, they were surprised. Oh, you're married? Yes, I'd say. But what I'd sometimes think, facing yet another handsome, attentive man, was, I wish I wasn't. The first time I'd known my husband liked me was when he, a self-proclaimed non-intellectual, showed up to one of my poetry readings. He stopped going to them altogether later. I asked him, why do you never go to them with me anymore? I never thought you'd keep doing them, was his answer. I blinked at him. I'd been doing them for years before I'd even met him, yet he thought I'd eventually stop doing them, something I was good at and loved doing. The first time I'd taken my husband to a party like this one, she doesn't ask why he thinks that. Apparently not. So you can see why their relationship had problems. She does not communicate. The first time I'd taken my husband to a party like this one, he'd been surly, politely saying hello and shaking people's hands when I introduced him, but then calling everyone mean nicknames like Gums, Lil Tits, or Praying Mantis to me for the rest of the party. He'd complained, whined, how much longer do we have to be here? I told him how this bothered me, so at the next party I asked him to, he hid in a corner on his phone the entire time, choosing not to speak at all, not even really to me. Yeah, I'm sure this was a complete surprise to her when she got married that this guy was doing stuff like this. It's amazing that this is the kind of stuff that a woman will observe and notice from the beginning of the relationship, but ignore and then blame you for later. You're just being yourself, who you are. So you have to be careful, guys, with women like this. You need to vet these women that you're dating. And especially if you want to be in a long-term committed relationship, you really need to vet the shit out of these women. She clearly was not doing that to this guy. Your husband's not enjoying himself? I was asked. I shook my head. Just not his thing. The next time I had an event, I asked him if he wanted to go. Not really, he said. Do you want to just stay home? Yeah, sure, he answered. That was his answer for all future events. Sometimes I'd push him to go anyway, but more often than not, I wouldn't. Again, a problem. Now let's get to the interesting stuff. I cheated. She's got a link here. I guess she wrote an article about it. And the author deleted this Medium story. Oh man, that's interesting. Okay. Bad sign right there. She had linked to a story about, I guess, explaining how she cheated or whatever, and then deleted it. Let me continue on here. I don't like to think about it. I don't like to think I was capable of doing that. Bad sign. That's a bad sign. Guys, if you're dating women and they tell you about something they did wrong and that's how they respond, run for your life. Because they have not internalized any real lesson from that. I've made mistakes. I've done things that I wish I didn't do, but I did them. I fucked up. It's okay to fuck up. Make mistakes. You have to own that shit. I cheated. I don't like to think about it. I just don't like to think I was capable of doing that. It lasted just 8 days, I want to tell you. Remember, this woman, I don't know if I said it in this video, but this woman's a relationship coach. Bad sign. It was just emotional. I'd filed for divorce 3 months before. I also want to blurt out. But does it really matter when you're taking your husband to bed with you and he's thinking you're reconciling, but you're thinking about another man? Holy shit. Another man you're talking to every chance you get to while at work? Wow. That is some bad behavior right there. I can give all of the excuses. I would never have cheated. I would have never cheated. She's got another article that she links here that is also deleted. If I hadn't found my husband had been abusing drugs. If I hadn't immediately gotten pregnant and then miscarried 2 months later. If he hadn't racked up $20,000 in credit card debt. If he hadn't embezzled. If I hadn't gotten pregnant again and then miscarried another 2 months later. I would have never. What the hell? This woman's life was complete chaos. And I'm sorry, if you're doing everything right, it should be relatively difficult to get pregnant. Using protection, birth control, something. Not having sex when the woman's ovulating. I mean, to get pregnant twice in 4 months is crazy. And to this guy, with this guy's kids. And she doesn't say she had a miscarriage with the second one. So I don't know if she if she kept, and here's something I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth. Ladies, if you allow a man like this, the greatest honor that there is, that a man can ever earn, which is to reproduce with a woman, if you are giving that away to a drug addict, to a man who racked up $20,000 in credit card debt, who embezzled, like, and you're keeping it, you're not aborting it. How do I want to put this? You're choosing that man to be, you're making a choice where that man's going to be a father. So you're choosing to have children with a man who's incapable of being a father. And that is incredibly selfish. Incredibly selfish. People are going to get upset when they hear that, but that's my opinion. You're bringing those children into chaos and destruction. Even if you leave that guy and become a single mother, again, that's a hard life. We shouldn't bring voluntarily children into that life, especially when we know in advance that the man, the potential father, is like this. It's fucked up. Maybe in the fact that my husband's name was rarely in my mouth meant it was just a matter of time before I put my mouth on someone else's. James Clear, in his book, Atomic Habits, argues for the power of trying to be just 1% better every day. Quote, if a pilot leaves from LAX, adjusts the heading just 3.5 degrees south, you will land in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. Such a small change is barely noticeable at takeoff. The nose of the airplane moves just a few feet, but when magnified across the entire United States, you end up hundreds of miles apart. What he's saying is that making a tiny change, be it good or bad, can guide your life to a very different destination. Yes, it can. Looking back, the changes... Excuse me. Sorry. Looking back, the changes were minute, seemingly inconsequential. I went to events and did things without my husband. More and more events where I was dressed up, sober, and not only alone, but lonely. Without his presence, it was easy then for men to come up to me. Attractive men, attentive men, men presenting themselves as their best selves, men who flirted with me and touched my bare or clothed arms, men who breathed their warm breath onto my face, men who perceived the truth that I was available. Loneliness in an intimate relationship whittles down whatever carefully wrought walls you have. Maybe too, my loneliness had its own siren song that drew these men to me. And given everything else we know about her, I would imagine she's sending out a lot of other signals as well. Because if she attracted, dated, committed to, and married, got pregnant twice by the man, her husband, she's sending out lots of bad signals. I rarely turned them away, see? Choosing instead to bathe in the light of their ephemeral affections. Women love attention. Women love attention. Sexual or non-sexual attention. They love it. I thought I wasn't doing anything wrong because I never gave them my number. Rarely ever saw them again. Just a harmless flirtation, I would tell myself every time. Clearly, I never addressed the issues in my marriage the way I should have. Duh. We'd done plenty of therapy, read books, and completed workbooks. Wow, okay. Eventually, we both agreed without ever saying so to keep the status quo. I did things alone. We fought, we made up. He was violent. There's something else. I pretended it hadn't happened. We made up. I tried to be okay with the way things were. I had my brief flirtations with strange men. I held onto their attentions and desires as if each time it was a piece I had been missing. It was. It was a brief interlude into the intimacy I wished I had in my own marriage. No, this is all just behavior. This is all just selfish behavior. Honestly, that's what it comes down to. Too selfish to communicate. Too selfish to care enough for yourself to get out of a bad situation. too selfish to tell these other men that you're married. This is all very, very codependent and unhealthy behavior. My desire to flirt, to be seen, to be found attractive wasn't a sign that something was wrong with my marriage. It was a sign that something wasn't right. It was a sign lots of stuff was wrong. Sorry, I don't agree with that. It's a sign that something was wrong with your marriage and something is wrong with you. The only clear solution for years was to leave. I was too much of a coward to do it until it was far too late. Well, it's good that she admits that. Because she picked him. Ladies, you pick these guys. Guys, you pick these ladies. I was the one who made a commitment I didn't uphold. I am the one to blame for that betrayal and all the tiny ones before it. Yep. I was careless and insensitive and selfish. My intentions to preserve my marriage eroded over years. It took a flirtation that blossomed inside of my own woundedness to finally have the courage to leave. It could have happened at any time. I know now. Yes, it could have. Well, that was interesting. And that gave me an opportunity to say some stuff that is very, very controversial. And I'm very curious to see what anybody else has to say about that. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you want to subscribe, please hit the subscribe button so you can view the rest of my content. If you have anything to say or any questions you want to ask, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If you want to send me an email, speak more directly with me. My email address is therevolutionarymail@gmail.com. My name is Alex. This is the Revolutionary Mail, and I hope you have a good one. I'll see you next time.